Welcome back to the EMT Spot's Blood Pressure Podcast. I'm Samuel Harrison, and with me, as always, is the amazing Olivia Harper. Today,
Yeah.
we're taking a deep dive into something you might not expect.
Okay.
The connection between mouthwash and blood pressure.
It's one of those things that makes you stop and think, wait, you use mouthwash for fresh breath, a clean feeling, and good oral hygiene. But could it be messing with your blood pressure?
It's a question we're going to tackle head on today. You know, a lot of people probably use mouthwash every day.
Right.
Without a second thought.
Right, and that's why we're here. Some studies have shown a link between frequent mouthwash use and an increased risk of hypertension, especially in certain age groups.
Okay, so let's break this down. What is it about mouthwash that could be impacting blood pressure?
Well, all it boils down to the tiny world inside our mouths, the oral microbiome, you see. Our mouths are teeming with bacteria, and not all of them are bad, in fact. Some of these bacteria are essential for our overall health, including our cardiovascular system.
So like a microscopic ecosystem in there.
Right.
With good guys and bad guys.
Exactly. And the good bacteria play a crucial role in producing nitric oxide, which is a natural compound that helps regulate blood pressure.
Nitric oxide. I've heard that term before.
Yeah.
But I'm a little fuzzy on the details.
Think of nitric oxide as a traffic controller for your blood vessels. It signals them to relax and widen, allowing blood to flow smoothly and reducing pressure. It's like turning a crowded 2-lane road into a spacious 4-lane highway.
Okay, that makes sense. So the good bacteria are our blood pressure buddies, helping things flow smoothly. But how does mouthwash fit into all of this?
Well, the problem arises when we use certain types of mouthwash, particularly the antiseptic varieties. These mouthwashes are designed to kill bacteria indiscriminately, wiping out both the good and the bad. And when the good bacteria take a hit, so does our natural nitric oxide production.
So it's like using a weed killer that destroys both the weeds and the flowers in your garden. You might get rid of the bad stuff, but you also lose the good things that were helping your garden thrive.
That's a great analogy. And that's why researchers are urging us to be mindful of our mouthwash habits, especially if we're already concerned about blood pressure.
This is really making me rethink my morning routine. So what can people do if they want to freshen their breath without potentially impacting their blood pressure? Are we all doomed to bad breath?
Not at all. There are alternatives to those harsh antiseptic mouthwashes. Some natural options contain ingredients like coconut oil, fluoride.salt, or even lemon peel oil.
Okay. Those sound a lot more appealing
Yeah.
than the chemical-laden mouthwashes I'm used to.
Yeah.
So we can still have fresh breath and a healthy oral microbiome.
That's the goal. Of course, more research is needed to
Yeah.
fully understand the link between mouthwash and blood pressure. But until then, it's wise to be aware of this potential connection and make informed choices about our oral hygiene routines.
This has been incredibly insightful. I'm already feeling more aware of how even small habits can have an impact on our health. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's take a step back and talk about the bigger picture of blood pressure. There's a lot more to it than just mouthwash, right?
Absolutely. While mouthwash is an interesting piece of the puzzle, it's important to remember that blood pressure is influenced by a complex interplay of factors. We're talking genetics, lifestyle choices, overall health conditions. It's a whole web of interconnected elements.
So where should we go from here? What are some of the key risk factors for hypertension that we should be aware of?
Well, there are a few big ones that come to mind. And these are things that many people might encounter in their daily lives. Family history, for example, can play a significant role. If your parents or grandparents have a history of high blood pressure, you might be more predisposed to it as well.
So those family gatherings might be more stressful than I realized. What else should we be paying attention to?
Age is another factor. As we get older, our blood vessels naturally become less flexible, which can lead to increased pressure. But that doesn't mean we're powerless. There's plenty we can do to maintain healthy blood pressure as we age.
Okay, good to know. We're not just at the mercy of our genes and the passage of time. Are there any other risk factors that stand out?
Lifestyle choices are huge. Things like diet, exercise, and stress levels can all impact your blood pressure. A diet high in processed foods, saturated fat, and sodium can contribute to hypertension.
So those late-night pizza cravings might not be doing me any favors.
Probably not. On the flip side, regular physical activity can help lower blood pressure and improve overall cardiovascular health. Even moderate exercise like brisk walking for 30 minutes a day can make a difference.
Okay, I can definitely get behind the idea of more walks and fewer pizzas. And speaking of lifestyle factors, what about stress? I feel like that's a big one for many people these days.
You're absolutely right. Chronic stress can wreak havoc on your body, and blood pressure is no exception. When we're stressed, our bodies release hormones that cause our blood vessels to constrict, leading to a temporary spike in blood pressure. But if that stress becomes chronic, it can have long-term consequences for our cardiovascular health.
Oh, that makes sense. It's like our bodies are constantly on high alert, which can't be good for our blood vessels in the long run. So what are some ways to manage stress and keep those blood pressure spikes in check?
There are lots of strategies you can try. Exercise is a great one, as it releases endorphins that have mood-boosting effects. Meditation and mindfulness practices can also help calm the mind and body. And spending time in nature has been shown to reduce stress levels and promote a sense of well-being.
Those all sound like great ideas. It's amazing how interconnected everything is. Diet, exercise, stress management, and even something as simple as mouthwash can all play a role in our blood pressure. It's a good reminder that we need to take a holistic approach to our health.
Exactly. It's not just about addressing one factor in isolation. It's about looking at the big picture and making lifestyle choices that support our overall well-being. And that includes being mindful of even those seemingly small habits that we might not have given much thought to before.
Well, I think this has been a fantastic start to our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground already, from the surprising connection between mouthwash and blood pressure to the broader context of hypertension risk factors. But before we move on, I want to make sure we're giving our listeners the tools they need to stay informed and take action.
That's a great point. We can't just leave people hanging with all this information
Yeah.
and no guidance on what to do with it.
Exactly. So what are some concrete steps people can take to monitor their blood pressure and make positive changes?
First and foremost, knowledge is power. Knowing your blood pressure numbers is crucial. You can easily monitor your blood pressure at home using a home blood pressure monitor, or you can get it checked regularly at your doctor's office.
That's a great starting point. But what if someone finds that their blood pressure is elevated? What should they do next?
Don't panic. The first step is to talk to your doctor. They can help you interpret your readings, assess your overall health, and recommend appropriate steps to manage your blood pressure effectively.
That's reassuring. It's good to know that there are resources available and that we don't have to navigate this alone. But what about those of us who are looking to be more proactive? Are there any lifestyle changes we can make right now to support healthy blood pressure?
Absolutely. We've already touched on some of them, but let's dive a bit deeper. Diet plays a major role. A heart-healthy diet is key.
Okay, so less pizza, more veggies.
You got it. But it's not just about cutting out certain foods. It's about making sure you're getting enough of the good stuff. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean protein. These foods are packed with nutrients that support cardiovascular health.
So it's about finding that balance and making sure our bodies are getting what they need to thrive.
Exactly. And don't forget about movement. Regular exercise is essential for maintaining healthy blood pressure. It doesn't have to be anything strenuous. Even moderate activities like brisk walking, swimming, or dancing can make a difference.
I love that. It's not about punishing ourselves with intense workouts. It's about finding ways to move our bodies that we actually enjoy. And I think that's a great note to end part one on. We've covered a lot of ground, but we've just scratched the surface of this fascinating topic.
Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into the research on mouthwash and blood pressure and explore some more practical tips for managing hypertension.
We'll be back soon with more insights and information.
Welcome back to the TheEMTSpot's Blood Pressure Podcast. We're diving back into the fascinating world of mouthwash and blood pressure.
I'm ready for more. Last time we talked about how certain mouthwashes might impact blood pressure by disrupting the balance of good bacteria in our mouths. But I'm curious, what does the research actually say? Are there specific studies?
There are that have looked into this. One study that caught my eye was published in the journal Blood Pressure. It followed a group of individuals who used mouthwash at least twice a day.
Okay, so what do they find?
The researchers observed that those who frequently use mouthwash had a higher risk of developing hypertension. Now, it's important to remember that this was an observational study.
Meaning it doesn't definitively prove
Yeah.
that mouthwash causes high blood pressure, right?
Exactly. It simply shows a correlation. There could be other factors at play, but it definitely raises a flag and suggests that further investigation is needed.
That makes sense. Correlation doesn't equal causation, as they say. So while we can't say for sure that mouthwash is the culprit, it's worth paying attention to.
Absolutely. Especially if you're already at risk for high blood pressure or have other underlying health conditions. It's always best to err on the side of caution.
So what about other studies? Have they found similar results?
Well, it's not a one-size-fits-all situation. Some studies that focused on specific groups, like vegetarians, omnivores, and young women, didn't observe the same link between mouthwash use and blood pressure.
That's interesting. What do you think might be happening there?
It could be that dietary factors or hormonal differences in these populations play a role and how their bodies respond to mouthwash. It's a complex interplay of variables, and more research is needed to tease out the nuances.
It seems like there's still a lot we don't know. So while we're waiting for more definitive answers, what's your take on mouthwash use? Should we all just ditch it altogether?
I wouldn't necessarily go that far. If you enjoy using mouthwash and don't have any blood pressure concerns, you might not need to make drastic changes. But it's always good to be mindful.
Mindful of what, specifically?
Well, for starters, the type of mouthwash you use could make a difference. Some mouthwashes are specifically designed to kill bacteria, while others are more focused on freshening breath or promoting oral hygiene without that intense antibacterial action.
Just choosing the right mouthwash is important.
It could be. And the frequency of use is another factor to consider. Occasionally using mouthwash might not have the same impact as using it multiple times a day, every day.
Okay, so moderation is key, just like with most things in life. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about some other things people could do to manage their blood pressure. You mentioned earlier that lifestyle choices play a big role. Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. Let's start with diet. A heart-healthy diet is essential for maintaining healthy blood pressure.
I'm all ears. What does a heart-healthy diet look like?
Think of it as a Mediterranean-style approach. Lots of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean protein. These foods are packed with nutrients that support cardiovascular health.
So more salads and less takeout.
Pretty much. And don't forget about healthy fats. Things like olive oil, avocados, and nuts are your friends. They can actually help lower blood pressure.
That's good news. I love avocados. Okay, so diet is important. What else should we be focusing on?
Exercise. Regular physical activity is a powerhouse when it comes to blood pressure management.
I know exercise is good for you. How does it actually impact blood pressure?
Well, when you exercise, your heart gets a workout, which strengthens it over time. A stronger heart can pump blood more efficiently, which reduces strain on your arteries and lowers blood pressure.
Makes sense. So it's like giving your heart a tune-up.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy intense. Even moderate exercise, like brisk walking for 30 minutes a day, can make a difference.
Okay, that seems doable.
Yeah.
I can definitely fit in the walk most days. But let's be realistic. Life can be stressful. And we talked earlier about how stress can impact blood pressure. Any tips for managing stress effectively?
Stress management is crucial for overall health, and blood pressure is no exception. Finding healthy ways to cope with stress is key.
Easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
But what are some practical strategies people can try?
Sure. First, identify your stressors. What are the things that trigger your stress response? Once you know what you're dealing with, you can start to develop coping mechanisms.
Okay, that makes sense. Know your enemy, right? But what are some effective coping mechanisms?
There are so many options. Exercise is a great one. It releases endorphins that have mood-boosting effects. Meditation and mindfulness practices can also be incredibly helpful.
Meditation, I've heard about it, but I've never really tried it.
It's worth exploring. It can help calm your mind and body, reducing stress and promoting relaxation. And there are tons of apps and online resources available to guide you. It's easier than you might think to get started.
I might have to give it a try. What about other ways to de-stress?
Spending time in nature is another fantastic stress reliever. Something about being outdoors, surrounded by greenery and fresh air, can do wonders for your mental and emotional well-being. And don't underestimate the power of simple things like taking a warm bath, reading a good book, or listening to calming music.
Those all sound so relaxing. I'm feeling calmer just thinking about them. But let's circle back to mouthwash for a moment. Earlier, we talked about natural alternatives to those harsh antiseptic varieties. Could you give us some more specific examples of what to look for?
Of course. Some popular natural ingredients that are often found in mouthwashes include coconut oil, which has antimicrobial properties, fluoride, which strengthens teeth, a salt, which can help soothe inflammation, and lemon peel oil, which has antibacterial and antifungal properties.
So there are plenty of options out there. for those who want to freshen their breath without potentially messing with their blood pressure. Or microbiome. I'm feeling much more informed about how to make healthier choices. But before we wrap up part 2, I'd love to hear any final thoughts you have on what we've covered so far.
I think the biggest takeaway is that blood pressure management is a multifaceted endeavor. There's no magic bullet. It's about making conscious choices that support your overall health and well-being. And those choices extend to all areas of your life, from the foods you eat to the way you manage stress, and yes, even the mouthwash you use. It's all connected.
Well said. It's a reminder that our bodies are complex systems, and everything we do has an impact. But with a little knowledge and effort, we can empower ourselves to make choices that support our health and vitality. And that brings us to the end of part 2 of our deep dive into the world of mouthwash and blood pressure. But don't go anywhere. We'll be back soon with part 3, where we'll wrap up our discussion and leave you with some final takeaways to ponder. Welcome back to the TheEMTSpot's Blood Pressure Podcast for the final part of our deep dive into the world of mouthwash and blood pressure.
We've covered a lot of ground, from the surprising connection between mouthwash and blood pressure to the broader context of hypertension risk factors and lifestyle modifications.
It's been quite a journey. But before we wrap things up, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier. Do you think this whole mouthwash and blood pressure link is a case of correlation, not causation? Or is there something more to it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And as we discussed earlier, the research is still evolving.
Yeah.
Some studies have shown a correlation between frequent antiseptic mouthwash use and an increased risk of hypertension. But more research is needed to determine if there's a true cause and effect relationship.
Right. So we're not saying that mouthwash definitively causes high blood pressure.
Yeah.
But it's something to be aware of.
Yeah.
Especially if you're already at risk or concerned about your blood pressure.
Exactly. It's all about being informed and making conscious choices. And even if the link turns out to be weaker than initially thought, this whole discussion has highlighted something really important.
What's that?
That even seemingly small habits can have an impact on our health. It's a reminder to pay attention to the things we do routinely, even something as simple as using mouthwash, and consider how they might be affecting our overall well-being.
That's a great point. It's easy to go through life on autopilot, not really thinking about the potential consequences of our everyday choices.
Exactly. And it's not about obsessing over every little thing. It's about being mindful and making informed decisions that align with our health goals.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, what are your top 3 takeaways for our listeners? What are the key things they should remember about maintaining healthy blood pressure?
Here are 3 things that stand out to me. First, be proactive. Know your blood pressure numbers and talk to your doctor about any concerns you have. Early detection and intervention are key.
That's great advice. What's number 2?
Embrace a heart-healthy lifestyle. That means a balanced diet, regular exercise, stress management, and quality sleep. These are the cornerstones of good health, and they can make a world of difference for your blood pressure.
Absolutely. And last but not least,
stay informed and be an advocate for your own health. Read reputable sources, ask questions, and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. As we've seen with this whole mouthwash discussion, there's always something new to learn, and our understanding of health is constantly evolving.
Those are excellent takeaways. And I think it's a perfect note to end our discussion on. It's been a fascinating exploration of the unexpected connection between mouthwash and blood pressure. And I hope our listeners have found it informative and empowering.
I agree. It's been a pleasure diving into this topic with you.
And to our amazing listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and feel inspired to take charge of your blood pressure and overall health.
Remember, small changes can make a big difference.
And with that, we've come to the end of another episode of the TheEMTSpot's Blood Pressure Podcast. I'm Samuel Harrison.
And I'm Olivia Harper.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share this episode with your friends and family. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of blood pressure and heart health. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay healthy.